The National Wrestling Alliance World's Heavyweight Championship. For almost half a century, it was recognized as the most prestigious title in professional wrestling. Even today, though the belt doesn't shine as brightly as it once did, mentioning the name still brings images to mind of legendary figures in the profession. As part of the 5,000 subscriber celebration on this channel, we'll take a look at every champion that has ever held a title since its birth in the late 1940s, up to the most current champion as of the making of these videos in December 2024. As with other videos of this kind on this channel, it won't be a deep dive into each and every title reign. It's just a glorified list of champions. However, we will slow down and take a look at some interesting points along the way, perhaps a little more than other videos. This was intended to be all in one video, but in the process of making it, I determined it was simply too much for one presentation. So we'll cover the history from July 1948 to May 1984 in Part 1. Part 2 of the video will cover May 1984 to present day. As you might expect, it's a long list with a lot of side stories, so let's get into it. The National Wrestling Alliance itself was founded in 1948 as a governing body for a group of regional promotions. Like the existing National Wrestling Association, which was owned by the National Boxing Association, the National Wrestling Alliance would recognize one true world champion. Prior to that, every territory recognized a different world champion. The important difference being the alliance was owned and operated by the different territories themselves, with a president and a board of directors. The original name of the world title was, and still is, the NWA World's Heavyweight Championship. The lineage officially began on July 14, 1948, when reigning Midwest Wrestling Association World Champion Orville Brown was recognized as the first NWA World Heavyweight Champion. Brown was part owner of Midwest Wrestling, as well as one of the founding members of the National Wrestling Alliance. Upon joining the NWA, Midwest Wrestling Association changed their name to Central States Wrestling. For the first NWA World Championship belt, Brown simply took his MWA title belt and covered the words Midwest and Association with plates that said National and Alliance. Brown traveled the country and began the process of unifying the NWA World title with the other recognized world titles in various regions, but Brown's run was cut short when a car accident on November 1, 1949 left him with injuries that forced him into retirement. Brown would make an attempt to come back a year later, working in a tag match with Bobby Bruns, who was in the accident with him, against Tarzan Kowalski and Vladimir Talon, but that would prove to be his last match. Brown was scheduled to have a unification match against National Wrestling Association World Champion Lou Thesz on November 25, 1949 in St. Louis, Missouri. With Brown unable to compete, the Alliance awarded the World Championship to Thesz, officially ending Brown's run at 499 days. One of the legends of pro wrestling, Thesz would become the first man to become synonymous with the title, as his first run with the belt officially lasted 2,300 days. However, it was not without its controversy. On March 22, 1955, Thesz defended the world title in San Francisco against Leo Nomellini. Nomellini was an active defensive tackle for the San Francisco 49ers and primarily wrestled in the off-season. Their match was a best 2 out of 3 falls match, as most title matches were at the time, with Thesz winning the first fall, Nomellini winning the second, and Thesz losing by disqualification in the third. The NWA had a standing rule that the championship couldn't change hands on a disqualification, so continued to recognize Thesz as the champion. The California Athletic Commission, on the other hand, recognized Nomellini as the new champion. Thesz won a rematch against Nomellini in St. Louis, Missouri on July 15th to settle the dispute, and Nomellini's 4 months as champion was never recognized outside California. Thesz finally officially dropped the belt on March 15, 1956 in Toronto to Whipper Billy Watson, the first Canadian to hold the belt. Watson had a run of 239 days, losing the title back to Lou Thesz on November 9, 1956 in St. Louis, and already making Thesz the first person to hold the title more than once. Thesz was approaching another year as champion when more controversy raised its head. Some territories began to grumble about Thesz keeping a stranglehold on the title, with some also being upset they were not getting enough appearances by the world champion, while promotions in and around states like Missouri and Texas were getting long tours and multiple appearances. States like California and Minnesota had long waits. Some of this hit a boiling point when Thesz defended the title against Edouard Carpentier on June 14, 1957 in Chicago, Illinois. When Thesz was unable to continue due to a back injury, Carpentier was actually awarded the match and the title. The title change was recognized by some territories, while others continued to recognize Thesz as world champion. The NWA itself officially considered the title in dispute and vacated for the time being. In a rematch on July 24, 1957 in Montreal, Quebec, Carpentier won by disqualification. Though some territories refused to recognize the title win, the NWA itself decided to recognize Carpentier as the champion as the title was vacant and technically did not change hands. A plan was put into place to have Carpentier and Thesz travel the country trying to settle the dispute in the ring. However, Carpentier and his manager Eddie Quinn actually quit the National Wrestling Alliance and refused booking dates from the organization. In response, the NWA simply negated both match results and officially recognized Thesz had never lost the title, meaning all of that never happened as far as NWA records are concerned. Carpentier continued to bill himself as the true world champion, which eventually led to the creation of the American Wrestling Association when he lost his version of the world title to Vern Gagne. Things settled down for the next couple of years as they pertained to the world title, with Thesz losing the belt to Dick Hutton in Toronto, Ontario on November 14, 1957. The Amarillo, Texas native had a nice reign of 421 days before he dropped the title to Pat O'Connor on January 9, 1959 in St. Louis. O'Connor's lengthy reign was interrupted only by a loss to Gene LaBelle in Amarillo, Texas, but LaBelle was immediately suspended after accidentally hitting the Texas State Athletic Commissioner. The NWA returned the belt to O'Connor and did not recognize LaBelle's victory. LaBelle claimed years later the accident was legit, but chances are it was all kayfabe. Otherwise, O'Connor held the title 903 days before losing the belt to Buddy Rogers on June 30, 1961, at Comiskey Park in Chicago, Illinois. That match drew a then record attendance. Exactly what that attendance was depends on the source, but all say it was around 40,000. Rogers proved to be a huge draw at the gate, but not every promoter was thrilled with Rogers as champion, as they claimed he favored northeastern territories over the rest of the country, to the point some promoters who also wrestled against Rogers were accused of purposely trying to injure him. Rogers actually lost the title twice in Toronto in August 1962, once to Bruno Sammartino, and again to Bobo Brazil. Both times, in storyline, the winners refused to accept the victory because Rogers was wrestling with an injury. After sustaining another injury in Montreal in the November 1962 match against Killer Kowalski, Rogers was sidelined for a month. During that time, Kowalski was also recognized as world champion by some territories, but the NWA never recognized the title change. The NWA did decide to take the belt off Rogers in that time, setting things up to make sure a hesitant Rogers would actually drop the belt. Rogers' reign came to an end on January 24, 1963 in Toronto, losing the belt to Lou Thesz in just under 15 minutes. That title match was a one-fall match rather than the traditional best 2 out of 3 falls. Citing that as their reasoning, the recently rebranded Worldwide Wrestling Federation refused to recognize the title change. The WWF withdrew from the National Wrestling Alliance and recognized Rogers as the first WWF champion. To note, the WWF did quietly rejoin the NWA in 1971, before leaving again in the 1980s under the name World Wrestling Federation. For Thesz, it was another long reign of 1,079 days, and, at least for the time being, there was finally a lack of drama and controversy that wasn't part of storylines. Thesz defended against established and rising stars of the time like Sam Steamboat, Fritz von Erich, and Dory Funk Sr., finally dropping the title on January 7, 1966 in St. Louis to Gene Kiniski. Kiniski was something of a bridge between the old guard in pro wrestling and the newer rising stars that would dominate the 1970s. After 1,131 days, which at the time was the second longest single title reign, Kiniski dropped the NWA title to Dory Funk Jr. in Tampa, Florida on February 11, 1969. Beginning his run just 8 days after his 28th birthday, Funk Jr. passed Kiniski for the second longest single title reign in the history of the title, with a mark that stands to this day. Funk held the belt 1,563 days before notably losing it to Harley Race in Kansas City, Missouri on May 24, 1973. The name Harley Race would go on to be synonymous with the NWA World Championship to many people, setting the standard for what the World Champion should be in the 1970s and going into the 1980s. However, at the time, Race winning the world title surprised most fans. Prior to his world title win, Race was seen as a regional star and noted tag team wrestler that did not have worldwide appeal. Though his first NWA World Championship run was a short one, the shortest in title history at the time, it put a different light on Race for fans. Race held the title only 57 days before he dropped it to Jack Briscoe on July 20th, 1973 in Houston, Texas. That was the same day NWA President Sam Muchnick unveiled a new world title belt, the famous Dome Globe of which the modern-day belt is patterned after. Officially, Race would be the first to hold it as it was presented to him before the match. Despite the title being called the World's Heavyweight Championship, most officially recognized champions had been from the United States, and only one was from outside North America, that being New Zealand-born Pat O'Connor. The Oklahoma native Jack Briscoe wouldn't change that, but he would play a part in broadening the global appeal of the title when losing it. After 500 days, Briscoe lost a world title to Giant Baba in Kagoshima, Japan on December 2, 1974. Baba only held the title 7 days before dropping the belt back to Jack Briscoe on December 9, 1974 in Toyohashi, Japan, 3 days before Briscoe's tour of Japan came to an end. This not only marked the first 2 times the title changed hands outside of North America, but also made Briscoe the only wrestler not named Lou Thesz to hold the NWA World title more than once. Briscoe's second reign lasted a year and a day before losing the title to Terry Funk on December 10, 1975 in Miami Beach, Florida. Funk's victory made he and older brother Dory Funk Jr. the first and thus far only brothers to ever hold the NWA World's Heavyweight Championship, with Terry's win coming about 2.5 years after Dory lost it. Terry's run as world champ ended after 424 days, with Funk dropping the title to Harley Race in Toronto on February 6, 1977. With 4 more years of experience under his belt, Harley Race in his second reign as world champ is the Harley Race most old-school wrestling fans remember. Race's second time around with the belt lasted an impressive 926 days, but it was only some token reigns that prevented Race from taking the belt uninterrupted into the 1980s. Dusty Rhodes ended Race's second run on August 21, 1979 in Tampa, Florida. The American Dream only held the title 5 days before he dropped it back to Harley Race on August 26th in Orlando, Florida. Race held the belt another 66 days before losing it to Giant Baba in Nagoya, Japan on October 31, 1979. Baba's second term with the title ended the same as his first, with a 7-day reign closing out by losing it back to Harley Race in Amagasaki on November 7th as Race's tour of Japan came to an end. With this regaining of the world title, Race became a 4-time champion, the most official reigns in the history of the title. Race would only add to that record. Race's 4th title reign lasted 302 days, ending on another tour of Japan when he lost the belt back to Giant Baba in Senga on September 4, 1980. This time Baba held the belt for 5 days, dropping it back to Harley Race on September 9th in Atsu, Japan. Harley held the title another 230 days before a title change that still raises a few eyebrows to this day. Tommy Rich, still 2 months shy of his 25th birthday, defeated Race for the NWA World title on April 27, 1981 in Augusta, Georgia. Much like when Harley Race defeated Dory Funk Jr. 8 years earlier, this surprised a lot of fans. Rich would only hold the title 4 days, which stood as the shortest NWA World Championship reign in history until a certain situation we'll get to much later. Many people over the years have wondered why Rich and why only 4 days. There has even been speculation that Georgia Championship Wrestling part owner and longtime promoter Jim Barnett coaxed Race into losing the belt to Rich without consent from the NWA. With video evidence that could be aired on WTBS, which had a growing national audience on cable, the NWA would not be able to deny it. According to Tommy Rich, it was actually Harley's idea, and Race even put up the deposit for the belt champions were required to pay. Most people in and around wrestling, like former manager Jim Cornette and wrestling historian George Shire, tell a much more simple story. Barnett did have a lot of pull in the NWA, and Tommy Rich was his top star and the most popular babyface in territory wrestling at the time. With Georgia Championship Wrestling airing on WTBS, even a short run as world champion would shoot Rich to the moon on a national level. Plus, for the rest of his career, he could carry the title former NWA World's Champion. The NWA and even Race could benefit as well, with the title change being talked about on a wrestling show that broadcast nationally. After creating a 4-day reign that still had people asking questions more than 40 years later, Rich dropped the title back to Race on May 1, 1981, in Gainesville, Georgia. Race wasn't done in Georgia just yet, losing the world title just 51 days later to Dusty Rhodes in Atlanta on June 21, 1981. In his second run with the belt, Rhodes tightened his grip a bit and held the title for 88 days before the title change some of you have been waiting for happened. Ric Flair won his first NWA World Championship on September 17, 1981 at Memorial Hall in Kansas City, defeating Rhodes in just under 24 minutes as the legendary Lou Thesz served as special referee. If you ask fans of any age today who they most closely identify with the words world champion, most people would probably say Ric Flair. With a career peaking at just the right time, Flair developed the perfect persona for the 1980s. Not only did he walk the fine line between good guy and bad guy better than anybody, but his rise to the World Championship came just as cable television was starting to break out. Promos from Flair in the 1980s still hold up today, and maybe more important than anything, Flair was willing to do what it took for the overall better of the business. If he had to look bad to make the local hero look good, he did it. For his first run with the NWA World Championship, Flair was still kind of in development, and Flair would later say that's why the NWA backed away from officially passing the torch, even though he did have a long title reign. There were also repeated occasions when the world title changed hands without being officially recognized. Just 5 months after winning the belt, Flair lost the title to the Midnight Rider. The Midnight Rider was really Dusty Rhodes, who was suspended in Florida at the time and wearing a mask, but not everybody knew that. Even though everybody knew that, it was one of those things. When Ryder won the title, NWA President Bob Geigel told him he would have to unmask or return the belt, as NWA rules forbade masked wrestlers from holding the championship. Rather than expose that he had been violating his suspension, Rhodes' Ryder returned the belt, and the change was not recognized. 7 months later, in September 1982, Flair defended the world title against Jack Veneno in the Dominican Republic. In front of 14,000 fans in a venue that was made for 10,000, Flair, well, it's hard to say exactly what happened, as clear unedited video of the match is not available. According to Flair, the finish was supposed to be Veneno had him in the sleeper as the time limit ran out. When the bell rang and the 14,000 fans packed into the arena began to celebrate, Flair was afraid the already rowdy crowd would turn into a riot if they then took the belt away from Veneno. Flair left the ring and even left the Dominican Republic without the belt, though he would get it back later. Of course, the title change was never recognized by the NWA. In a similar situation in San Juan, Puerto Rico, Flair faced Carlos Colon in a title versus title match, with Flair defending the NWA World Championship and Colon defending the World Wrestling Council World Championship. The match was working under NWA rules, and at one point with the referee down, Colon threw Flair over the top rope and appeared to win the match. A referee came from the back to tell the ref of the match about Flair going over the top rope, and Colon was disqualified. The crowd was literally on the verge of a riot when Flair told the ref to restart the match so Colon could pin him, and they could both get out alive. This same bit played out on April 1, 1983 in Dallas when Flair faced Kevin Von Erich at the Sportatorium. This time there were no threats of an actual riot, though fans were disappointed Von Erich did not leave with the belt. There was also a situation in Trinidad where Victor Jovica defeated Flair for the title and kept the belt for 3 days, but the decision was officially reversed when video showed Jovica had his feet on the ropes. Excluding all the title changes that were not recognized, Flair held the title for 631 days in his first run. Some people will point to that as a rebuttal to Flair's claim that he was not ready and the NWA was not sold on completely handing the torch to Flair. But from the NWA Board of Directors' perspective, they kept seeing things like Flair leaving the belt behind in the Dominican Republic and having to deal with situations like what happened in Puerto Rico, all while they were not there to see what happened in context. There could have been many reasons for it, but on June 10, 1983, Harley Race defeated Flair for the world title in St. Louis. That marked Race's unprecedented 7th title reign, more than double the number of times anybody else had held the title in the then 35-year history of the belt. Race held the title 167 days, and during that time, the NWA weighed its options on what to do next with their World's Heavyweight Championship. Flair was obviously in the discussion, and other possible future champions included David Von Erich and Ted DiBiase. There are a lot of unconfirmed rumors, but they all lead to the same result. Flair's base was in Jim Crockett Jr.'s Mid-Atlantic territory, and Crockett obviously wanted to put the belt back on Flair. Along with Booker Dusty Rhodes, Crockett presented the idea of Starrcade to the NWA, a major event card that would be presented on closed-circuit television, which was the precursor to pay-per-view. The NWA liked the idea, and on November 24, 1983, in Greensboro, North Carolina, Ric Flair defeated Harley Race in a steel cage match to begin his second run with the NWA World Championship. It was the early stages of a shift in power that would change the National Wrestling Alliance forever. During this time, David Von Erich had risen in the eyes of prominent figures in the NWA like Dory Funk Jr., Harley Race, and obviously his father, Fritz Von Erich. Thanks to most things being verbal agreements and handshake deals with no documentation thanks to kayfabe, it's tough to confirm, but it has been said the NWA was leaning toward David to take the title from Race. That changed when the idea of Starrcade was presented, but it came with the promise Flair would hold the title about 6 months and then drop it to David. The table was set, with David to face Flair at the 1984 Parade of Champions at Texas Stadium on May 6th, but it was a match that would never happen. While on tour in Japan in February, David Von Erich passed away. Whatever the plan was for David and the world title was obviously off the table, but the NWA agreed to go ahead with the May 6th match for the Von Erich family as a memorial to David. However, a funny thing happened on the way to the Parade of Champions. As official records currently stand, on March 21, 1984 in Wellington, New Zealand, Harley Race defeated Ric Flair for the world title. 2 days later in Singapore, Flair defeated Race to win the title back. The NWA did not recognize either of these title changes at the time, and nobody outside New Zealand and Singapore knew the matches took place, other than those who saw a few pictures that appeared in Japanese magazines. Years later, the NWA would alter their records, and now recognize Race becoming an 8-time NWA World Champion, and Flair regaining the title in Singapore. Promoter Steve Rickard had cut a deal for Harley Race to win the title. Flair agreed to it because, to his understanding, the NWA Board of Directors had given their approval. Apparently, the plan from the start was to switch the title back to Flair in Singapore 2 days later in a match that was already booked. The problem was, not only had the NWA not given their approval, nobody let Singapore in on the plan. Promoters in Singapore had pumped a lot of money into posters, advertising, and TV spots billing Flair as the champion. So, when it came time for Race and Flair to face off in Singapore, Flair came to the ring as champion, and Race as challenger, with Flair defeating Race. Retroactively, this was recognized by the NWA as a Race defense, with Flair regaining the title, and is another example of pro wrestling being pro wrestling. 44 days after the match in Singapore, Flair lost the world title to Kerry Von Erich at what was now known as the David Von Erich Memorial Parade of Champions in Irving, Texas. Kerry's short title reign was in honor of David, and 18 days later, on May 24, 1984, in Yokosuka, Japan, Flair defeated Von Erich to regain the title for a third, or what is now recognized as a fourth time. What nobody knew at the time was Kerry Von Erich would be the last champion to come from the territories. That is every NWA World Champion through May of 1984. Part 2 of the video covering everything from May 1984 to present day will be up as soon as possible. Depending on when you are watching this, it may be up already. If so, you'll find the link on the end screen and in the description. Or you can check out one of the other videos on the channel. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe, not necessarily in that order. And I will see you next time.